When Perry Como knocked on the hotel room door, Dean Martin was looking at a gun on the nightstand. It wasn't his gun. It belonged to the Mafia. A reminder. A message. It was November 12th, 1958 at 3 a.m., and we were at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Dean had 72 hours to find $50,000. In 1958, $50,000 was worth about $500,000 today. It was an amount Dean didn't have at that moment. It was money he couldn't ask anyone for. If he couldn't find it, it would cost him something far more valuable than money. The Sands was quiet at this hour. The slot machines had stopped clanging. The drunks had stumbled to their beds. And Dean Martin, the coolest guy in America, sat alone in his suite, staring at a gun, wondering if he was going to die. Then there was a sound at the door, and it knocked. Dean didn't move. He thought they had come. They had come early. They had come to collect his debt. But the sound at the door wasn't harsh. It wasn't threatening. It was calm. Completely polite. "Dean, it's Perry. Open the door." Dean stared at the door as if he had seen a ghost. Perry Como? At 3 in the morning? In Vegas? What happened in the next 10 minutes not only saved Dean Martin's life, it revealed something about Perry Como that Hollywood had completely misunderstood. Something about quiet men and loud gestures. Something about the difference between fame and character. And this story remained a secret for 30 years until Dean's daughter finally revealed the truth. Let's go back a bit, because to understand what Perry Como was doing that night, you first need to understand how a mob gun ended up on Dean Martin's coffee table. Dean Martin wasn't a gambling addict. At least, he wasn't like the guys in Vegas who couldn't walk past a gambling table without rolling the dice. Dean gambled for show, for his image, as part of the Rat Pack's mystique. You sing, you drink, you gamble, you seduce women. That was the brand. But in 1958, Dean made a mistake. A big mistake. He co-signed a loan for a friend. His name was Tommy Vitagliano. Tommy was an old acquaintance of Dean's from the days when Dean was Dino Cricchetti, working as a barber in the town of Steubenville, Ohio. Tommy had a dream. He wanted to open a restaurant in Atlantic City. He needed capital. The banks wouldn't give him a loan. "Dean, you're like my brother," Tommy said. "Just put your name on the paper. That's all I need." Dean signed. Not because he was a fool. Because he was loyal. Because in Dean's world, you helped your friends. You didn't ask questions. You just helped. Tommy's restaurant went under in 6 months. And the loan? It wasn't a bank loan. It was from a loan shark. A loan shark connected to the Genovese family. When Tommy disappeared, vanished without a trace, the debt fell on Dean. $50,000, plus interest. It had to be paid within 90 days. Dean tried to handle the situation quietly. He spoke with his manager. He spoke with his accountant. But the problem was this. In 1958, Dean Martin was rich in terms of fame, but not so rich in terms of cash. Of course, he was making good money, but that money was tied up. Investments, real estate. His divorce from his first wife had cost him dearly. He had alimony payments. He had expenses. Cash? $50,000 just sitting there? He didn't have it. He couldn't ask Frank Sinatra either, because Frank had his own complicated relationship with these guys. Asking Frank would mean admitting weakness. And weakness was not shown in the Rat Pack. Never. Dean was in a bind. And the deadline was approaching. Then the gun appeared. It appeared on the coffee table on November 9th. Dean returned from his show, opened the door to his suite, and there it was. A .38 caliber pistol. Loaded. There was a note underneath. 72 hours. Dean knew what that meant. He would either pay the money or be forced to use the gun. Not necessarily on him, that would be too obvious and risky, but on someone he loved. His children. His mother in Ohio. These guys didn't play games. Dean spent 3 days trying to find a way out. He asked everyone he knew for help. He tried to liquidate his assets. But nothing was moving fast enough. Every night when he returned to his suite and saw the gun sitting there, he poured himself a drink and wondered how his life had come to this. Perry Como wasn't supposed to be in Las Vegas that week. He hated Vegas. Too loud, too flashy, too artificial. Perry was a family man. He liked his home in Long Island. He liked his routine. He liked peace. But NBC had asked him to make an appearance at the Sands. Some charity event? Some photo op? Perry said yes because he always said yes to charity. That's just who he was. Perry arrived on November 11th, did his thing during the day, smiled for cameras, signed autographs, and that night he went to see Dean's show. Perry and Dean weren't close friends. They were acquaintances. They would see each other at industry events and have pleasant conversations. But they were in different circles. Perry was a reliable, wholesome television dad. Dean, on the other hand, was the rebellious member of the Rat Pack. Different worlds. But Perry noticed something about Dean's performance that night. Something was off. Dean Martin was always naturally cool on stage. That was his thing. He made everything look easy. But that night, Perry noticed the flaws. Dean's timing was a little off. His smile didn't reach his eyes. During one song, Dean's hands were shaking. Most of the audience didn't notice. They were drunk. They were having fun. But Perry noticed, because Perry had spent his entire career analyzing and observing people, reading them. After the show, Perry did something unusual. Instead of returning to his hotel, he stayed there. He waited at the casino. Around 2:30 in the morning, he saw Dean walking alone in the lobby. No one was with him. The Rat Pack was gone. Just Dean, hands in his pockets, walking toward the elevators. Perry followed him. He didn't know why. It was just a feeling. The same feeling he had years ago when he stopped a stagehand from jumping off the light platform. The man was about to step into the void. Perry grabbed his arm. He saved his life. This felt like that. Perry took the elevator up to Dean's floor, stood outside Dean's suite for a full minute, debating whether to knock. It was 3 a.m. Dean probably wanted to be alone. But Perry knocked anyway. Dean opened the door. He looked terrible. His tie was undone. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked at Perry with a confused and bewildered expression. "Perry, what are you doing here?" "I saw your show tonight," Perry said calmly. "You weren't yourself." Dean forced a smile. "Just tired, buddy. It's been a long week." Perry didn't believe him. "Can I come in?" Dean hesitated. Then he stepped aside. Perry entered the suite. He immediately noticed the gun. It sat on the coffee table next to an empty glass and a crumpled note. Perry stopped. He looked at the gun. He looked at Dean. "Are you planning on using it?" Dean laughed bitterly. "It's not mine." "I figured." Dean sat down on the couch. He ran his hand through his hair. "Perry, you should go. This isn't your problem." Perry sat down across from him. "Talk to me." Perry Como had this quality. He had a voice and personality that inspired trust in people. Not just when he sang, but when he spoke, too. There was something about Perry's presence that made people want to tell him the truth. Dean looked at him for a long moment. Then he started talking. He told Perry everything. The co-signed loan, Tommy disappearing, the mob, the deadline, the gun. "I've got till tomorrow night," Dean said quietly. 50 grand. I don't have it, Perry. I've called everyone. I've tried everything. I don't know what to do." Perry listened without interrupting. When Dean finished, Perry was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up. "I'll be right back." He left the suite. Dean sat there confused. 5 minutes later, Perry came back. He was carrying a small leather briefcase, the kind businessmen used. Perry set it on the coffee table next to the gun. Opened it. Inside was cash. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills, all bundled neatly. Dean stared. "Perry, what?" 50,000, Perry said simply. "Take it. Pay them. We're done." Dean's face went white. "Perry, I can't." "Yes, you can." Where did you— Doesn't matter. Dean stood up. He looked like he might cry. Perry, this is— Do you know what you're doing? This is mob money. If I take this— You're taking it, Perry said firmly. You're paying them tomorrow, and then you're never talking to Tommy's friends again. Understood? Dean just stared at the money. At Perry. Back at the money. I can't pay you back. Not right away. It might take years. Perry held up his hand. I don't want it back. Dean blinked. What? I don't want it back, Dean. It's not a loan. It's a gift. Perry, $50,000 is just money. Perry's voice was calm, matter of fact. You know what's not just money? Your life, your kids, your career. That's not just money. So take the cash, pay the debt, move on. Dean sat back down, put his face in his hands. His shoulders started shaking. He was crying. Dean Martin, the king of cool, was crying in front of Perry Como. Perry put a hand on his shoulder. Didn't say anything. Just sat there. After a minute, Dean looked up. Why would you do this? Perry smiled. Because somebody needs to. The next morning, Dean paid the debt. He met with the collectors at a warehouse on the edge of town, handed over the briefcase, they counted it, nodded, took their gun back. We're square, one of them said. We're square, Dean repeated. He never heard from them again. Perry Como left Vegas that same day. Didn't stick around, didn't ask for thanks, just flew back to New York like nothing had happened. Dean tried to call him a week later. Perry's assistant said he was busy. Dean tried again a month later. Same response. It took Dean 6 months to finally get Perry on the phone. Perry, I need to talk to you about— There's nothing to talk about, Perry said gently. How's your family? Dean paused. They're good. Then we're good. Take care, Dean. Perry hung up. What Dean Martin learned years later was this, that $50,000 was Perry Como's entire savings. Perry had been saving money for 10 years. He and his wife Roselle had a dream. They wanted to buy a house. Not in Hollywood. Somewhere quiet and peaceful, maybe in Connecticut. A real house with land. A spacious place for their children to grow up away from the chaos. They saved every extra dollar they earned. They lived modestly. They made careful investments. By 1958, they had saved $50,000. They were very close to their goal. Another year or two, and they would have enough money for a down payment and renovations. When Perry returned from Vegas, Roselle noticed the bag was missing. Where did the money go? She asked. Perry told her everything, one thing at a time. Roselle was silent for a long time. Then she asked, Did you save it? Yes. Then we did the right thing. They started saving again. From scratch. They had to wait another 12 years to buy that house. They finally bought it in 1970. It was a beautiful place in Connecticut. It had everything they had dreamed of. But they never told anyone about the 12-year delay. Or why. Dean Martin found out the truth in 1982. He was at a dinner party. Someone mentioned Perry Como, said something about Perry's house in Connecticut. Took him forever to buy that place, the person said. I heard he had some financial setback in the late 50s. Dean's ears perked up. After the party, he made some calls, asked some questions, pieced it together. When he realized what Perry had actually given up, Dean was devastated. He tried to send Perry money. Perry sent it back. He tried to buy Perry gifts. Perry refused them. Finally, Dean drove to Connecticut. Showed up at Perry's house unannounced. Perry answered the door, surprised. Dean? We need to talk. They sat in Perry's living room. The house Perry had waited 22 years to own. Dean tried to speak. Couldn't. Finally managed. You gave me your dream. Perry smiled. I gave you a chance. That's different. Perry, you and Roselle, you waited 12 extra years because of me. We waited 12 years because we chose to. Nobody forced us. We made a choice, Dean, and we'd make it again. Dean's voice cracked. Why? Perry leaned forward. Because some things matter more than houses. You had kids. You had a career. You had a life. We had time. We chose to use our time to give you yours back. That's all," Dean cried. For the second time in his life in front of Perry Como, he cried. Dean Martin never spoke publicly about what Perry did. Perry asked him not to. "It's not a story," Perry said. "It's just what happened." But Dean found his own way to say thank you. Every year, on November 12th, the anniversary of that night, Dean would send Roselle Como flowers. Always roses. Always with the same card. "For the lady who gave up her dream so I could keep mine." He did this every year until he died in 1995. After Dean's death, his daughter Dina was going through his papers. She found a sealed letter addressed to Perry Como. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note. "Perry, I know you won't cash this. You never do. But I need you to know. You didn't just save my life that night. You taught me what it means to be a man. The debt isn't money. It never was. The debt is living a life worthy of your generosity. I've tried. I hope I've succeeded. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for everything. Dean." Perry Como received the letter 2 weeks after Dean's funeral. He read it, cried, then put it in a drawer. He never cashed the check. This story didn't come out until 2001, when Perry Como passed away. Dina Martin and Perry's children finally told the world what had happened in that Vegas hotel room 43 years earlier. The media called it the greatest act of friendship in Hollywood history. But Perry Como would have called it something simpler. Just helping a friend. Because that's who Perry Como was. Not the boring singer, not the safe TV dad, but a man who understood that real strength isn't loud. Real courage isn't flashy. Real friendship isn't about what you say. It's about what you give when nobody's watching. Dean Martin lived another 37 years after that night in Vegas. He became a legend. He raised his kids. He made people laugh. And every time someone asked him, "Dean, what's the bravest thing you ever saw?" he'd smile and say, "Perry Como walking into my hotel room at 3 a.m. with a briefcase full of cash and no questions." That's the story of the night Perry Como saved Dean Martin. Not with applause, not with headlines, but with silence, sacrifice, and a briefcase full of someone else's dream.